Welcome, everyone, to 12 News at 4. I'm Kariba Devine.
I'm Troy Hayden. All new at 4. A Mesa woman accused of stabbing her 82-year-old husband to death and then walking next door, still holding the knife.
It's a Saturday night in a gated community in Mesa, Arizona. Quiet, safe, the kind of neighborhood where nothing ever happens. Then the doorbell rings, and the woman standing on the other side is covered in blood, holding a knife. Wow. Now stay with me, because what happens in the next few minutes inside that house is going to change 3 lives forever. An 82-year-old man, his wife, and 2 neighbors who just wanted to help. Period. This one's heavy. Let's get into it. Christina Copley, 41 years old, married to Ed Copley, 82. Now I know what you're thinking. That's a big age gap, and yeah, it is. But this isn't a story about age. This is a story about what was already happening behind that front door long before Saturday night. Ed was known around Mesa. He had his own art gallery. He was a painter. People in that community respected him. The kind of man you'd wave to on the street. The kind of man neighbors would later say didn't deserve what was coming. Christina, on the other hand, she had a history that the court system already knew about. 2 separate misdemeanor cases were sitting open in Mesa City Court before any of this happened. Assault, disorderly conduct, and in both of those cases, the named victim was Ed, her husband. So what does that tell us? This wasn't the first time things got physical in that house. This wasn't the first time somebody called the police. There was already a paper trail. And here's another layer to this. Neighbors say Christina had talked to them about living with untreated bipolar disorder and that she was taking lithium to manage it. Now, I want to be clear with y'all. We don't know if that condition played any role in what happened that night. Nobody's confirmed that. But it's part of what people around her knew, part of the picture. Anyways, let's keep moving, because the tension in that marriage didn't stay quiet for long. 2 open cases, 2 allegations of domestic violence, both naming Ed as the victim. Like, think about that for a second. This wasn't a marriage where everything looked fine on the surface, and then boom, out of nowhere, tragedy struck. There were warning signs already sitting in a courthouse file. Officers had already been called to that address before. This was a couple the system already had eyes on. Just not enough eyes, apparently. Neighbors in that gated community later said something that's gonna stick with you. One of them put it plain and simple. Maybe she could have gotten help. He could have gotten help. That's not hindsight talking. That's people looking back at a situation they now realize had been building for a while. But on that particular Saturday, none of the prior cases had escalated to a felony. Mesa police, when they'd responded before, only had grounds for misdemeanor charges, so the case stayed in city court, stayed smaller than what was actually happening. I said what I said. Sometimes the system sees pieces, but not the whole picture. And then Saturday night came, around 10:20 in the evening, and everything that had been sitting quiet in those court files turned into something nobody could walk back from. 10:20 p.m. Saturday night. A doorbell rings in a gated community off McDowell Road. Ryan Andrews opens the door, and standing there is his neighbor, Christina Copley. Blood on her right arm, blood on her left arm, blood on her face, her legs, her chest, and in her right hand, a large kitchen knife. Now here's the thing. Ryan and his mother Kelly didn't know what they were looking at. Their first thought wasn't, this woman just hurt someone. Their first thought was, this woman needs help. So what do? They let her in. They try to help her. And that's when it happens. Christina tells them she just stabbed her husband. Tells them Ed is dead. Right next door. Court records say multiple people inside that home heard her say it plain, I stabbed him, and then I killed him. Girl, imagine that moment. You open your door to help a hurting neighbor. and 30 seconds later, you're standing in your own living room with a confessed killer. Ryan later described what she looked like in that moment, and it's chilling. He said she kind of stared at nothing, wide-eyed, like she wasn't really there anymore, and he and his mother made a decision fast. They backed away because in that moment, they didn't know what she was capable of next. She could have easily turned that knife on either one of them. So what happened inside the Copley house before she ever knocked on that door? Ed Copley, 82 years old, was found with multiple stab wounds to his face, his neck, his upper body. He didn't survive. Mesa police respond to the 911 call from the Andrews home. They take Christina into custody right there. Now here's where it gets complicated. Christina tells detectives a different version of events. She says it was self-defense. She says Ed attacked her first and that she took the knife away from him during the struggle. But then, and this is her own account, she says she went, in her words, ballistic, started swinging. But hey, here's the problem for her story. Police say the physical evidence didn't line up with parts of what she told them. So investigators aren't just taking her word for it. They're working the scene, working the wounds, working what the house tells them versus what she's saying happened. And remember what we talked about in batch 1? Those 2 open misdemeanor cases? Assault, disorderly conduct, both naming Ed as the victim? Investigators already know this wasn't a couple with a clean history. That context doesn't disappear once the body's found. It shapes how detectives are looking at her self-defense claim. Christina is booked on a charge of second-degree murder. She's held at Maricopa County Jail on a $500,000 cash-only bond. No property bonds accepted. Cash only. Anyways, that's where the legal side stood in those first 48 hours. But the community around Ed, his neighbors, the people who knew him from his gallery, they were already grappling with something else. Grief and the question of whether this was preventable all along.
We are hearing from Mesa residents who came face to face with their neighbor who admitted to them stabbing her elderly husband to death.
12 News journalist Sean Rice is live outside of Mesa Police Headquarters with more on what must have been a terrifying Saturday night. And Sean, they say that this woman showed up on their front doorstep covered in blood.
Just after 10 o'clock on Saturday night, Ryan and Kelly Andrews say their doorbell rang at their home in a gated community in Far East Mesa. When Ryan opened the door, he says his neighbor, Christina Copley, was standing there covered in blood, holding a large kitchen knife.
She had her knife in the right hand. Her whole right arm was just covered in blood. Her left arm, too. There was some on her face, her legs, her chest. It was all over.
They believed that she had just been injured and invited her inside, but they say as they tried to help her, she told them she had just stabbed her husband, Ed, and that he was dead next door. Court records say multiple people inside the home heard Copley say, quote, "I stabbed him," or quote, "I killed him." Police later found the 82-year-old's body inside the couple's home with multiple stab wounds to his face, neck, and upper body.
Just staring at nothing, and you know, at that point we kind of backed away because you don't really know, because she could have easily stabbed one of us.
Mesa police officers responded to Ryan and Kelly's 911 call, taking Christina into custody. Investigators say Copley claimed she was acting in self-defense, telling detectives her husband attacked her first. But police say the physical evidence did not match parts of her account and that she eventually told investigators she took the knife away, then went, quote, ballistic and started, quote, swinging. There's also a history here. In Mesa City Court, Christina's facing 2 different misdemeanor charges, assault and disorderly conduct, connected to prior domestic violence incidents with her husband as the named victim.
Maybe she could have got help, he could have got help.
Exactly.
Ed Copley is known in the Mesa community as an established painter. Outside of his gallery store, now lays yellow roses and a candle. His neighbors calling his death preventable.
There, a person died. My family has been affected by this. I wish it wouldn't have happened.
So let's recap where things stood legally. Christina Copley, booked on second-degree murder, held on that $500,000 cash-only bond at Maricopa County Jail. No wiggle room there. Cash only meant she wasn't walking out easy. Her defense, from the very start, centered on self-defense. She told detectives Ed came at her first. She said she managed to get the knife away from him in that struggle. But then, by her own words, something shifted, and she went from defending herself to swinging that blade herself. Now here's the turning point that matters most in this whole case. Police didn't just accept that account and move on. They matched it against the physical evidence, the wounds on Ed's body, the scene inside that home. And parts of her story didn't hold up. Multiple stab wounds to the face, the neck, the upper body. That's not the pattern you'd typically expect from someone purely defending themselves in a single struggle. And then there's the paper trail sitting right there in Mesa City Court. 2 prior misdemeanor cases, assault, disorderly conduct, both domestic violence related, both naming Ed as the victim. That history didn't disappear just because this was now a homicide case. It became part of the larger picture prosecutors could point to. So what came out of all this? A case that moved from misdemeanor territory straight into a second-degree murder charge, now sitting in the more serious track of the legal system. Girl, that's a heavy shift, from disorderly conduct paperwork to a murder charge in what looks like the blink of an eye, but really, it was building the whole time. So what do we take from all this? Ed Copley was 82 years old, a painter, a man with his own gallery, known and respected in his community. His neighbors left yellow roses and lit a candle outside in his memory, and more than one of them said the same thing in different words. This felt preventable. There were 2 open cases already. There was a documented history. There was a system that saw pieces of what was happening in that house, but maybe not the full weight of it. I'm not here to tell you who to blame in this one. That's not my job. What I will say is this: when there's already a pattern, when the police have already been called before, when there's already a paper trail with someone's name on it twice, that's information. That's a signal. And this case is a hard reminder of what can happen when those signals don't add up to intervention in time. But hey, that's the story as it happened. Ed didn't make it home from that Saturday night the way anybody would have wanted. And Christina is now facing the weight of a second-degree murder charge with a self-defense claim that the evidence, according to police, doesn't fully support. Y'all let me know what you think in the comments. Was this preventable? Did the system fail somewhere along the way? I said what I said, but I want to hear from you too.